thought that one of the subjects that would be very topical for people who are interested and engaged in campaigning would be TIFs. You hear a lot about TIFs, especially during this time of year. Everybody's talking about TIFs and how the money is being used, and the fact that it's usually being used as the mayor's daily and Rahm Emanuel's personal slush funds for their own pet projects, and not usually used for projects in the community. TIFs were created to attract development to blighted communities. That was the whole purpose, but that is not being used in the right way, especially when it comes to communities of color. And so, one of the hosts, or the hosts of tonight, are Citizens for David Moore, United Working Families, and Civic Lab. That's who is putting on this event. And so I'm going to introduce now David Moore, who is a candidate for 17th Ward.
Thank you so much. First of all, since we are in the house of the Lord, I definitely want to, if you don't mind, you all saying it, brief prayer. Precious Father, when we come to you, thank you for these thy people, Lord. We ask that you cover us and bless this meeting, O Lord. Allow us to get the fruits of your labor and the knowledge that we can move our community forward, O Lord. Touch each and everybody that is here and everybody that is on their way. Give them traveling grace. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Amen. First of all, I want to thank Elder Lee in his absence at this point for allowing us to use this facility. And I want to thank United Working Families for, thank you, you can do that. Thank United Working Families for partnering with us as we will partner in the future to make sure we get the things for our community. What's important here, and as you people know, I work for the Cook County Board of Review for Tax Appeals. And one of the things that I found out going from community to community is that people do not mind paying their fair share. They do not mind paying their fair share of taxes. But it's two things. They don't want to be overtaxed, and whatever they're being taxed, they want to make sure their money is being used correctly for the services that they want to receive. And so that's what this is about tonight. Because what's happening is that it's not that we have bad teachers. We don't have the money to make sure that the teachers have what they need to teach our kids. Our fair share from our tax dollars are not coming to our community. You're paying your fair share, you're doing your part, but the tax dollars are not coming back to our community. Year after year, children are saying, at the beginning of the school year, we don't have our books. How can you not have your books to get started with? So you're at the starting line, and already other schools have taken off, and you're still at the starting gate. Because you're waiting, our children are waiting for their books. That's because they're not getting their fair share. And so that's what this is about tonight. We're going to be talking about not only from an education standpoint, but these TIF dollars from an infrastructure standpoint. When Harold Washington started the TIF program, understand when you hear TIF, don't think it's a bad word. It's a good word if used properly. Harold Washington created it to be used in blighted communities. I'm sorry, downtown is not blighted. So the millions of dollars that's going to downtown to build parks there, to build a hotel there for a multi-billion-dollar corporation is not right. That's plain and simple. It's not right. And so we have to understand, number one, what TIF is all about. First of all, with TIF, there needs to be transparency. And that is why I brought a subject matter expert here. Understand that. Because I have knowledge, and I'm an accountant by background, and by the time I finish going through that stuff, it blows my mind. And every time I look and I go somewhere else, somebody else saying, even the people who are supposed to know, well, I don't know. If they don't know, how in the world do the people out here in the community supposed to know? And so where we can, and that's how I'm going to do when I get in office, it's not about I have to know everything, but I have to know where to get that information from and how to make it available to you. And that's what we're here to do tonight. So I don't have on my glasses. I want to bring on Matthew Laskin so he can give a total overview of the program and what we're going to continue to talk about throughout this night. So I thank you all for taking your time after working. I know you're tired, but guess what? We need this information because number one, information is power. And it's true that people in our community suffer because of what? Lack of knowledge. All right, so thank you so much, and we'll move on with our program. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. The next Alderman of the 17th Ward. My name is Matthew Luskin. I am a parent of 3 sons in the Chicago Public Schools and an organizer with the Chicago Teachers Union, where I help represent our members at schools in the Englewood-Gresham network, so sort of in this community, many of these schools right around here. I work with both the teachers at those schools who are in the union, but also with parent organizations around the area, many of the local school councils and parents who've been active, especially where we've had some real fights, and we've had big fights on the south side around the public schools, right? Yeah. We've been pounded on these school closings. 50 schools were closed in this city, right? We had a mayor who chose, and we should be clear that this was a choice, chose to close more schools than Hurricane Katrina, right? This was the biggest school closing ever enacted by an American city. And we saw that these school closings targeted Black and Latino communities. Almost 90% of the impacted students were African American, right? And they like to throw their hands up and act as if budgets, when they talk about the budget at CPS or with the city of Chicago, as if these are things that are just a law of nature, right? It's like gravity. We're just broke. Sorry, there's nothing we could do. As if the budget was handed down from God himself and their hands are tied and their only choice is to close schools. And we've got to push back on this idea, right? Budgets are political. Budgets are a moral document. People have heard that saying, right? Budgets reflect the priorities of the people who get to make the decisions. And right now, not enough of us sitting in this room get to make those decisions, right? We would have very different budgets if we had more of a voice. And that's part of what this is about. After they closed the schools, they came back and the schools that were left standing were further devastated by another round of cuts. People might remember before the teachers' strike a couple years ago, we were talking a lot about how many schools didn't have libraries in the city, right? It was roughly 160 schools with no library or no librarian, right? Students had no access to a library in their school. And when they closed these schools, supposedly to help save resources and provide a better education to these children, and we should say, those 160 schools with no library, 150 of them were south of North Avenue. Right? And when they did these school closings, you would think you would wind up with less schools that are lacking those kind of resources, right? If you believe what they're saying, they were trying to preserve resources, provide more to these children, and we saw the opposite happen. In fact, we saw another round of devastating budget cuts. I was just telling the brother in the back, I was visiting Orr High School the other day, out on the west side. Orr High School, one school that is struggling, took over a $1.2 million budget cut this past year. That's how they started the school year, on one school, right? So we've just seen it get worse. There's not a dime to spend on students, is what they tell us, but then millions to put into kind of a PR effort pitting parents and teachers against each other, right? This has been their attempt. And we need to be clear about this, that the same people who want to bust our union and cut our pay or get rid of pensions in the city, they are the same millionaires that are dedicated to not paying taxes, or if they do pay taxes, they sure as hell aren't going to let that money go to fund public education and neighborhood schools in Black and Latino neighborhoods, and they're sure not going to let it wind up anywhere where it's under public control rather than private control. So, you know, here's what's happening. When our schools are struggling, we get blamed. And I don't just mean the teachers, I mean communities, right? We get told that the parents aren't working hard enough. When they take over these schools and shut them down, they get rid of the local school councils and push out the most active community members, right? We're being told that we can only deserve this funding if it's under private control. They bend over backwards to fix the budget as long as it's taking from the community. When they couldn't close schools fast enough, they went down to Springfield and got a law changed to allow them to close schools even faster. They're pushing to change the laws to be able to take from retirees in the community, right? We've lost 50% of the African-American teachers in the city in about a 15-year period, right? They're willing to work overtime to save resources when it's at our expense. But there's a different question, which is all of this money that's flowing out into private control, either through the TIF funds, through rip-off deals with the banks. People might have seen in the news this week, Deborah Quazzo, one of the members of the Board of Education, one of these billionaires appointed to run the Board of Ed by the mayor, right? We don't get to elect our Board of Education. Turns out, not only does she sit on that board and get to vote to close our schools, because millions of dollars that companies she's a part owner of have picked up in contracts with CPS. So she's voting to close our schools, saying they can't afford education in this community, but at the same time can afford to make her and her pals wealthy once again. And so tonight, this is what we're hoping we can do. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about what we need. What are the resource needs at our schools? We're going to have a presentation from Mr. Tresser about the TIF programs and understand where some of the resources in the city are going and how little control and transparency there's been over some of that. And then lastly, we're going to try to wrap up the night with a little discussion about what we can do to change things. I just want to pull up a couple people from here in the ward who are experiencing the fights in these schools to say a couple words about what they're facing. So Mr. Gowder, if you don't mind coming up. Mr. Gowder is a member of the local school council at Clara Barton Elementary School. He's going to say a couple words about what they've been facing there at Clara Barton, what this lack of resources means for them at their school, not far from here.
Thank you, sir, for having me. And thank you, brother, for taking the stand for us, Brother David. Those people that know me and heard me speak before know that I love this opportunity. Now, I hadn't done it in a while, but bear with me. I'm a member of Clara Barton Local School Council. From 2005 to 2015, Clara Barton had not had a library at the school. Now, let me tell you what the librarian did for me to enter elementary school. I was one of those trouble kids, they called it. But the librarian taught me the Dewey Decimal System. So I was able to go to the library. I forgot the young lady's name, but I can picture her to this day.
Miss Anderson.
Yep, Miss Anderson. I was able to go to the library because I was always good at mathematics. And I was able to utilize the Dewey Decimal System to put the books back on the shelf. And you know, she pulled certain people in and I was one of them. So I became fond of books. I love to read. Right now, I'm reading a 600-page book just for fun and just for the information. So the best kept secret is always in the book. I tell people all the time, if you don't get a chance to go to the bank and you got a pocket full of money, get the biggest book in your house. Put the money in between the pages, sit it on your coffee table in the living room. The only person going to reach for it is big. I'm going to be like, oh, what you read? But I'm here to speak about other things that we need. We need more. Not just David more, but we need more. State Title I funds are being cut at all our schools. Federal Title I funds are being cut at all our schools. We need more. Every time I go to the Board of Education and raise issues that can better Clara Barton School, I've always had resistance. So I say we need more. And we all need to do our part. Not just a couple of us, not just all of us. I know in the past, things have always been accomplished with just a handful of people. But those handful of people, we go through so much to fight for y'all. And a lot of y'all don't even realize the value that you have just sitting in this room of the fighters that's been fighting for years. So we have a lot of talent. We have a lot of untapped talent. The reason why our talent has not been tapped is because they have no venue to shine. And that's a shame that in our community, there's no place for our talent to shine. We need more. And we need to change that. So we all need to take a stand. And I'm going to make this real quick. So how many of y'all remember that disco song? More, more, more. How do you like it? How do you like it? I want y'all to start singing that to everybody y'all know. So that when they go to the poll and vote, they'll be singing more, more, more. And I want to leave y'all with this. So what I plan to do for my community and my people to keep fighting. Also, what I plan to do, and what all of us need to do, is punch 52. Because 52 is going to give us an opportunity for change. Now, this brother right here means a lot to me, a whole lot to me. And I try to spend as much of my available time and resources to make sure this brother gets to where he's going. And anybody who know me know I don't play. So if I say I'm with you, I'm with you. And if I say I support somebody, that means they have integrity and honor. Because that's what I believe in, integrity and honor. Because I learned at a young age when I was a soldier in the Army. I signed up for the military at 17. My mama had to co-sign. But it was after I finished high school. I thank God for a decent education. Back in the 70s, we had teachers that came off the struggle that said, you young black kids gonna learn. We don't have that same will that we had then. But I say that to say that we can get back to it. We got to do our part. We got to take a stand. But the military at a young age taught me integrity and honor. My sergeant over in Germany name was Sergeant Messman. I'm going to end with this. Sergeant Messman said, because, you know, we were young. I was in Germany, 18, 19 years old, having fun, seeing everything. Sergeant Messman said, "Gowder, what happens? You know, something happened." I was known in the barracks as the one that bullied, but not bullied, that gave out the discipline in the barracks. Because we had certain people that didn't respect certain people. So, you know, we had to put everybody in order. The barracks was ours, and we ran it. But something happened in the barracks, so he was trying to get to the bottom of it. He said, "Gowder, I have to believe in you, brother." He said, "Do you know what integrity means?" Of course, I was a young brother. I've heard the word, but didn't really know the meaning of it. I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Okay, well, let me tell you what it means. It means, brother, that I got to have faith in what you tell me. That means that if you tell me something, I got to be able to take what you tell me and go to the company commander and fight based on what you tell me. Don't let somebody else come tell me something other than what you told me." I said, "Brother, I got integrity, and what I'm telling you is true. Integrity and honor. I love this brother. I appreciate him. I appreciate all y'all doing everything you can for him. I appreciate the teachers union, the brother right here and his organization, and let's do more, more, more." Thank you.
Clara Barton School, when he says that they don't play, he means it. I mean, this is a school that was on the list to be taken over. Once again, blaming our communities, saying that this school was failing, that they couldn't run their own school anymore. They were told that this school was going to get taken over by a private company, fire all the staff, get rid of the local school council, push out the parents. They fought back. Now listen to this. While they were on the list to be taken over, all of a sudden there was money to start installing a new computer lab in the school. Because it was going to be removed from community control. Now we can spend a little money there. Once they got taken off the list, construction stopped. They didn't get their computer lab in. They were left with a set of computers that these students still can't even do all this testing on that they're having pushed on them, right? I mean, this is what we've been facing. And I'm going to call up one other person, Kimberly Walls, if you don't mind sticking your head up here for 1 second. Miss Kimberly Walls is a teacher, a union delegate in the Chicago Teachers Union, and was a proud teacher at Guggenheim Elementary that was right here in the 17th Ward and shut down a couple years ago. So you want to talk about the ways they sabotage schools or set up our community telling us they don't have the resources for us. This school was closed not in the year that they just said that there wasn't money, but they were also saying we had to close this school because it was the only way to save these children. Things are just so bad, there's no other way to improve it. And so they shut this school down. And Ms. Walsh.
How are you all? I'm sorry, I'm a bit winded because I just left work. So I'm a union delegate, like he said, so we all those issues. So I started off as, I just like everybody know, I started off as an AUSL candidate. And I went through the AUSL program. So I can speak to both AUSL, the charter, also and CPS. I left AUSL because of differences in political differences. So I started working at Guggenheim in about 2008. The principal and assistant principal took me up under their wing, and that's when we had the new teachers leader program. Just to give you feedback of why the fight became as strong as it was, and give you a little bit of background. So you have teachers come into a school, and you have CPS who mandate all of these mandates, I should say, for lack of a better term. You have to do this, you have to provide this, you have to do that. So by the second year I was there, not the second year teaching. If you all don't know, when you think about tenure, non-tenure teachers, we need to stay in the dark a little bit to become tenure, so that we can then voice ourselves and won't be what they call clicked. It was the second year I was there, the first time Guggenheim was staged to be closed. I believe that was 2010. But the issues were, we didn't have enough special education services for our students. The current network chief at the time, which was Adrian Willis, I'm not scared to say it, stated that he provided these resources, and at the current time, the current now Alderman Latasha Thomas said, we provided these sources, you a lie. And so we really became, after we were slated to be closed, we then became a target because we called everybody a lie. So we had the special education services that we did not have. We did have a librarian, but we didn't have that gym teacher that CPS mandated. Everybody has to have gym. But we don't have a PE teacher because the PE teacher was, the budget wasn't there to provide for the PE teacher. So now we have another issue. Now you have subs coming in and out. So here's where we are. You have a school that's starved of resources, and we are busting at the seams with students. We're busting at the seams needing wraparound services. And then you also have parents who have been, who were honestly wonderful parents because they were also getting some of their resources from the school. So Guggenheim essentially was a family. Some of those teachers had been there for 20 years. So some of those current students who I had, their parents had gone there and their teachers were still there. So I think that's how we won the first fight. So we were starving, and we're not going to talk about computers. These are just some things that some schools already had that our current aldermen and network chiefs that they currently provided. So it wasn't until we were, you know, sometimes you have to go through a storm to see the sunshine. And so I guess that Guggenheim, the first time we were closed because we became stronger and we really understood what CPS was. So I'm saying this to you all, if you have children within CPS, you have to fight for your school to become a TIF school if it's not already a TIF school. Meaning the tax increment financing that's in your ward should go to your school. And if your school is not a TIF school, then your alderman should make it a TIF school, theoretically. Unless you force your alderman to do that. How do you do that? You gotta go. So, she gonna win this time. She out. And I must say, David has been there since, and I remember fighting. He's been there the first time we were closed, the second time. I'm in budget meetings, he at budget meetings. I'm in CPS board hearings, he at CPS board hearings. So he's been there. He understands the necessities that are needed within the school for your child to be successful. So let me take you back. At USL, they're CPS teachers as well. They're CTU members. The only difference is that USL were provided that funding to have that extra staff to provide those extra services. So there is no golden apple to what AUSL does. Their test scores are the same test scores. Why? Because those are my colleagues. Those are the same teachers. The only difference is those teachers may be more scared to speak out because it's a different management. But they're still CTU, but I'm going to get off that subject. I'm sorry. I digress. So as parents, I get mad. As parents, you have to become involved with the PAC so that you can make sure that your school has a nurse. Your school, we need nurses. Full-time nurses. They have to be there. I don't know what it's in Jimmy when he hits his head. I'm not a nurse. I'm a science teacher. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a nurse. I don't know what to do. But the nurses are there. Maybe once a week we may get a nurse. Half a day. So you need to ask your alderman, why are you not demanding these services down at City Hall? Because your current alderman was on the educational committee, which we call our outline. How dare your schools in the 17th Ward and the person who's now running in her place from her office. See, I know the office real good. She can say, I know it real good. I picked up the office, been to the office before and after Guggenheim closed. I moved to a different ward and work in a different ward, and I'm still at 17th Ward's office because it's wrong. So you need to ask, why don't we have a social worker? Because our babies are sick, and this is my time. I see you coming next Sunday. We need social workers. That comes from TIF funding, full time. That could come from your TIF. Okay? All of these positions can come from the TIF funding. Social workers, speech pathologists, special education teachers, PE teachers. If your school does not have the budget, then your alderman does. Wow. Your alderman has the budget from TIF, tax increment finance. It's her responsibility to allocate your school, because the schools on the right side and the north side do. I didn't say the right side, but the north side do. Their aldermen allocate these funds because those mothers demand it. And everybody mom is a working mom. Some moms, they get to stay at home. But those parents have time to literally sift through. I know because I meet with these parents all the time. They actually look at CPS's budget. They know how much money of CPS's budget goes to their child in their school. And then they have the audacity, but they really don't, because they could do that. But they ask them, why is this money going to that school and not their child at this school? That's what we black people need to do. This is God is true. We need to ask, how come my money, we only get $8,000, but my child is South Shore, but North Side, another child got $12,000. Okay, I'm sorry.
So we're going to wrap up. I just want to say, Guggenheim, just, listen to this again, right? So we're told that the community's at fault, we've got to lose this school, we can't fix it here, and then you hear what we were never given, to start with, right? 3 administrators, 3 different principals in under 2 years, no PE teacher, no math teacher for what, a good 6 months of that school year? 30% of the students, a year and a half, 30% of the students in that school were in the homeless education program. Talk about a need for social workers, right? But no resources for any of that. But once again, they just shrug their shoulders and say, right, these budgets came down from God, there's nothing else we can do about it. So here's the deal, we're going to move the agenda here, right? We're going to learn about these TIF programs. At the Chicago Teachers Union, we're really proud that we've been fighting on these issues for a while. We know that TIFs aren't going to be the magic bullet that fix all of our funding issues. It's going to take some other things as well. We're going to make rich people actually pay taxes in this state. There's going to be a number of things we're going to do to win the kind of funding that we need for our schools. But this is an important one that we can understand what the impact is locally. Mr. Tresser is going to take us through that. And then we're going to come back to a discussion about what we can do to fight for this here in the 17th Ward starting now. We're also proud to be part of the United Working Families, a coalition that's building for independent political strength in our communities. And so we're going to talk about some solutions going forward at the end of the agenda. So, Tom, are you ready to take over?
Sure am. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, my name is Tom Tresser, and I'm a volunteer with the Civic Lab, an organization that is about innovation and collaboration, education for social change and civic engagement. We're located on the west side, in the West Loop. We invite you to come by 114 North Aberdeen and visit with us. This is a meeting here tonight to talk about TIFs, but it's also much bigger than that. And first of all, I want to say thank you to David and to the minister of this church. I have a personal note to you, sir. I run for office a couple of years ago. I know how hard it is. So it's a sacrifice when you stand for office. It means you can't be with your family, you can't be with your loved ones, you can't do the things that you might want to do because you're trying to serve. So a round of applause for the candidate because he put himself out there for you. That is a beautiful thing. And it's also been my experience that leadership starts with showing up. And so give yourselves a round of applause for showing up here tonight. And you could be home watching, I don't know, Dancing with the Stars or whatever. But no, you're here. You're here to get some knowledge and to act on it, all right? So let's talk TIFs, shall we? The TIF Illumination project has been going now for just 2 years, starting tomorrow. This is the 32nd meeting that we've done. 31 meetings like this before tonight, with good people like yourself sitting in chairs just like this, trying to figure out what the heck is tax increment financing, why should I care about it, and how does it fit into the bigger picture? How does it fit into the bigger picture? So I'm going to ask you to think about a few things as we go through our work tonight. The first question is, what is a city for? What is a city for? Okay? Another way to ask that question is, who plans what for who? Who plans what for who? When you hear the word community development, be suspicious. When you hear the word, we need to make Chicago a world-class city, and then they put the Olympics on you, or build another Ferris wheel down at Navy Pier, be suspicious. So ask yourself the question, who plans what for who? And then you have to ask yourself the question, what happens to our tax dollars? What is the best use of the hard-earned dollars that you earn and put into the system? And who gets to call the shots? Those are the big things that I think that are underneath the work that I do, and hopefully will share with you tonight. All right, tax increment financing. How does it work? It is a program created by the city, so it is always run by the city. It's a state law. Every city runs it in their own way. So the TIFs that we create here in Chicago don't go to Evanston, and the TIFs created in Cicero don't come to us. So it's a city thing. And in the city of Chicago, it is the Department of Planning and Development, Commissioner Andrew Mooney, who of course serves at the pleasure of the mayor. The idea was that in certain communities that have trouble, the normal development process of building stuff is short-circuited. And then we get into this world called blight. And I have to say, we could stop here and spend the rest of the night discussing who blighted who. You follow me? Right? In Chicago, with its long history of redlining, exclusionary practices, blockbusting, and predatory lending that goes up to this very day, it's a conversation that needs to be had as to this word blight. I think it's a loaded word, but it is the word that is in the statute, so we have to deal with it. But it goes something like this. Say I'm a developer and I want to build a little strip mall, right? With a sundry store and a dry cleaner, something like that, in this little strip mall, right? And I want to do it down on 59th Street or whatever, you know, right in the area. And I go to the bank and I say, I need to build this little mall, and it's going to be about a $4 million project. You know, it's got the parking lot and the 7 storefronts and whatnot. And they say, Tom, you know, that community is, you know, it's troubled. You know, if you put that store there, it's not going to succeed. Why? Well, because the people are going to steal from you, or they're too poor, or whatever. This blight thing, meaning if we lend you this money, it's at risk, so we're going to have to give you a higher rate than if it were in another community. So sure, go ahead and build your mall, but it's going to cost you 40 points on your loan. So, well, I can't make that work. Is there any way, can I get some help somewhere? And the city says, yes, we can help you, and we can give you some money so you can do your thing, which you privately own, because the community will benefit if we have this little mall with the sundry store and the dry cleaners. Jobs will be created, you'll be paying property taxes, so we have a thing called tax increment financing that we will create for you. And remember that TIFs can only be used for construction, mostly. So there is some provision for non-construction, but the main purpose is to build stuff that produces property taxes and creates jobs. So, if there is no TIF district currently in this imaginary scenario, one can be created for me. Now this right here is the Howard Paulina TIF district that was on the north side of the city. It's no longer there, but what happens is they draw the boundaries, right? And they count up all the properties inside the boundaries, and say there's 1,000 properties in this area, and say that those properties have given off, say, $1,000 in property taxes. That's what we start with. So here's the first word to remember, and that is the word the base. That $1,000 that exists right now as we begin our work, that stays frozen. Now, an aside, who can tell me what agencies of government are funded by property taxes? What agencies of government are funded by property taxes? Parks, yes. Schools. Libraries, yeah. There are a few more. He said parks. We got police, fire. We have police and fire. So the city of Chicago is the recipient of property taxes, the county of Cook, the Water Reclamation District, and the city colleges. So as we started with a comment that the gentleman said, Mr. Moore said, we don't have any trouble paying our taxes to go to these things. That's the deal, right? You live in a great city, there's bills to pay, and in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois, you rely very heavily on property taxes, especially for public education. So who gets the most of your property taxes? What of those agencies get the most? The schools. It's about 56 cents of the dollar. So you pay $1 of tax, and this 56 cents of that is supposed to go to the Board of Ed to do their thing. Therefore, we must be very mindful of anything that takes $1 of property tax off the table. Okay? If $1 of property tax goes missing, there are consequences. So we need to keep that in our minds most foremost. Now, even if you are a renter and you say, look, I don't own property, what does all that have to do with me? You're still paying because you pay to your owner and he or she then pays their bills. So you're still in the system. And more than that, I would say if anybody uses public education or uses the buses or goes to the library or, goes into the park or the beach, you are still consuming public services if you rely on the police or fire or any of these things that we're speaking of. You're in the game. This matters to you. This is for everyone, whether you live in a TIF district or not. All right, back to our example. So we have now this TIF district. We've established that there's $1,000 of property taxes generated at the start of this game. Now, I build my little project. Now we have 1,001 properties. Now it's a few years later, other people are building, new things are happening, property values are rising. Here's the thing, every penny above that $1,000 that we spoke of is collected by the TIF district. That's the increment. You with me? The $1,000 that we are saying is the base. That goes to these units of government that you just named. The schools, the libraries, etc. But that stays flat for 23 years. Doesn't matter if there's inflation, doesn't matter if there's an earthquake or an asteroid hits us, that's flat. Every penny above that is captured by the TIF district. It looks like fueled by property taxes, they're only for building stuff. The TIF money is handcuffed, which means that it's supposed to be used in the TIF district that is collected. So those are some of the key points. This chart tries to show that relationship. There's the base for 23 years. You see it's flat. This is the increment. Another way to think about this diagram is this. This money that is collected and used by the city government and local agencies, that's for us. This is for the mayor. Right? Wow. This is for the mayor. And in some places in the city, this right here is 90% of all the taxes collected in the TIF district. Right? So it's a big number. We're going to get to just how big this is in a second. But that essentially is how TIFs work. So now when you hear the word increment, this is what they're speaking of. The money, every penny over that base. And in the case of my little example, we imagined that this was $1,000, So back in year 0, when the TIF was first created, all those properties were contributing $1,000 to the operations of the city and the county. 23 years later, that's a generation, right? I mean, that's, it's like in the Bible, that's a generation, right? It's still the same. Hasn't changed. All right. That's the basics. Now, this just reminds us of that point. The 56 cents of the dollar goes to the public schools. 18 cents to the city. And you see, so all this, that's your base. Good? Okay. Now, this thing called blight, this is where the train starts to go off the tracks. There is a statute that outlines the definition of blight, and it's about 13 features, and in order to qualify to get the TIF money, you have to satisfy 5 of them. 5 of the 13 qualities. And they seem common sense, like code violations, age of property, obsolescence, excessive vacancies, etc. That sounds like it makes sense, except this is some blighted areas. LaSalle Street, so blighted, oh my God. The TIF down there took in almost $1 billion. Halsted and Monroe in Greektown, Mariano's Grocery, $7 million. The company that owns Mariano's Roundies had $3 billion in revenue. So how is this a blighted area? I mean, you know, it's bustling. With the community where I live, in Lincoln Park, there's this is the North Avenue subway stop at Clybourne. This building right back here is Grocers Auto. They got $8.5 million in TIF money. Here's an Apple store. Oh, Christ, how blight is that? I can't even look at it, it's so blighted. Across the street is Charles Schwab stock market store, Steppenwolf, the Tony Award-winning theater. You get the picture? Well, the city of Chicago has warped and has stretched the definition of blight to include virtually anything and anywhere. So that's one of the first things that we notice about this program. Now, how do TIFs get created? Oh boy, people want to know about that. Can we figure this thing out? That's the flow chart of the authority and you know, who says what when. But look, this is Chicago. It's this guy.
Yes, it is.
It's what he wants. If he wants a TIF, he'll get one. If he doesn't want a TIF, you won't get one. If your alderman is in tight with the mayor, and he wants a TIF or she wants a TIF, you'll get one. If you don't want a TIF, and the alderman who is in tight with the mayor wants one, you'll get one. Okay? This is statues at the south end of Grand Park. I don't know if you see that. They have no heads. So the mayor is giving the aldermen their marching orders, telling them where to go and what to do. Now, it's not my opinion that this is a study done by a great professor named Dick Simpson at UI. He's been studying this for 30 years. The aldermen we have with us now are the most compliant, the most rubber stampy in history. In history, since records were kept. They vote with this mayor on the order of 90%. Your alderman, right here, 100%. 100%. On contested issues, things where it makes a difference. Now look, nobody's right or wrong 100% of the time. I even agree with wrong sometimes, you know, but 100%? Well, I point this out to you just as if you don't like what you hear tonight, if you don't like this, you got to make some change. You got to make some change because they are not going to change. Left to their own devices, you have to make the change. All right. TIFs have run them up. You know, it's that monster movie. You know, the guy creates the monster and he thinks he's going to control it. You know, then it bursts his chains and it starts trampling the village. You know, you ever see those movies? That's what TIFs have. So we've got 154 TIFs in the city of Chicago. 154. 30% of the land mass of the city of Chicago is in one of these bad boys. No city in America comes close. No city. We're number 1. Yay. 154 TIFs in the city of Chicago. In the last year, we counted $422 million of your property taxes across the city sucked up by these TIFs. That's almost $500 million, ladies and gentlemen. And this has been consistent for the last 5 or 6 years. So even in a down economy, Chicago is robust enough. Our properties, you know, have value that are being vacuum cleaned in this way to the tune of almost $1 billion every 2 years. Now, since TIFs were created back in 1986 by the late Mayor Washington, they have taken $6 billion. $6 billion. Now, it's a fair question to ask, where did that money go? Where's it at? Well, that's what the TIF Illumination Project has been dedicated to these last 2 years. We have 100 volunteers who have been working tirelessly to do the research that we're placing before you now. So let's have a round of applause for them, because they are working in secret and quiet, you know, in the privacy of their homes, doing this research so that I can stand here and look like I know what I'm talking about. $6 billion since 1986. And here's, as I show, you know, this is the map of all the TIFs, and look how they touch. You see how that goes? There's a reason for that. I said that originally the idea is that TIF money is supposed to be spent in the area that it's collected, except when it's not. They can move money around as long as the TIFs touch.
Wow.
And that's called porting, transporting. And so money can move from hither to thither, and we tracked $140 million that was moved around in 2013 from one TIF to another, and there's nobody who can tell you really why, you know, except the insiders for projects that, you know, that wanted to get done. So there's the Godzilla monster stomping on, you know, Chicago, Mr. TIF. Now I'm going to tell you something that I think is probably the most shocking finding that we've done in our work. And it goes back to another key question that I want to raise for you, and it's already been asked by our speakers. And the question is, are we broke?
No.
Are we broke?
No.
Do you believe it when they say we're broke?
No.
Okay. Well, you're right to be skeptical, and I'm going to show you why. The TIF Illumination Project looked at all the annual reports of these TIF districts. So every TIF has a little report that's about 34 pages, and it's got like a checkbook. So our accountant here will know, you know, how you read your books, you know, and everybody here who manages your own accounts for your businesses, your home, you know, you start your year with a balance, you have your expenses and your income. Hopefully at the end of the year you have more, you know, than you started at the end of the year. But you have something in your checking account that gives you a record. And the same thing for Mr. TIF. So there's 154 TIFs. We opened up 154 reports, extracted information, put it on a spreadsheet. Now this is something you will not find on the city's website, by the way. No matter what they say about transparency, this is something they do not want you to know. And so, are you all sitting down? Yeah. So we're sitting down. So, at the end of 2013, this is how much money was in the TIF accounts.
Wow.
Yes. Let the record show a collective gasp has gone up from the crowd. $1.71 billion, ladies and gentlemen, in property taxes sitting somewhere in some accounts. Now, would you be offended if it was held by the Bank of America?
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
You wouldn't be surprised, but would you be offended? Some of us wouldn't be offended. They're criminals, and they're already, you know, they're involved in quick takes and all kinds of, you know, seedy businesses. So we're not sure who's holding this money. We're not sure under what you know, circumstances. Are we getting a good interest rate, or is it yet another sweetheart deal? The teachers union pointed out these strange bonds that we've entered into where we're paying and paying and paying and paying. We can't seem to get out of it. Is this another example of that? We don't know. $1.71 billion. These are not magic beans. These are your property tax dollars. And remember, this country got started over taxes. Remember, we got all mad about taxation without representation. We went to war. We went to war. Maybe it's time to get busy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's time to get that anger again, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. All right, continuing on. It's a big deal across the entire state. So while we have our problems here in Chicago, we're not alone. There are 549 other municipalities in our great state that are facing the same issue. So we've got 154 TIFs, but there's 1,220 across the entire state. And since TIFs came to the state of Illinois, they've taken $14 billion. So now you can ask yourself the question about the state as well. Is the state broke? Right? You know, if they're not being fair with us, if they're not being straight with us at the city level, are they being straight with us at the state level?
No.
Is this a sham that you're being perpetrated on with all this nonsense with pensions, and we can't pay these people who've worked their entire lives, and now we're going to change the deal on them? There's no other way because we're broke. I don't know. Our research seems to indicate otherwise. And oh my God, he says I could have had a V8. All right, to sum up so far, TIFs equal your property tax dollars. The increment is what is collected by that TIF district. It's like a black box that collects it. It's like, it takes it off the top, by the way. Think of it like Vegas. You know, the mob skims in Vegas, you've heard of that? So you pay your bill to the city, and then the TIF reaches in there and grabs off the top. Off the top of it. And if you live in a TIF district now, for the first time, you can actually see this on your property tax bill. Up until this summer, it wasn't the case. Your bills were lying to you, but we helped change that. It's run by the city. It lasts 23 years. It's supposed to satisfy the blight and the but-for condition. That is to say, but for this public money, this project could not have been built. But I refer you back to Mariano's on the corner of Halsted and Monroe. You're meaning to tell me that you couldn't get a commercial loan for that project because it was a blighted community. Across the street, they built a Dominick's, the old-fashioned way. You know, they went to the bank and got a loan. They're very hard to track, and they're a very, very big deal here in the city and in Illinois. Okay, that's the big picture, but we're here to talk about your community, in particular, the 17th Ward. So let's zoom in, shall we? The 17th Ward, we're going to look at the new map. So the information I'm telling you is reflected by the new ward boundaries. These are the 6 TIFs that are relevant to you. They are the 79th Street corridor, the Greater Southwest Industrial TIF, the Englewood Neighborhood TIF, the 79th Street Southwest Highway, 69th Street and Ashland, and 79th. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that not all of them are predominantly in your ward. Some are and some aren't, and this is true for the whole city. They wander all over the map. So many times you will share a TIF with your neighbor, your neighboring ward, and it's true here. So this fellow right here, the 79th Street corridor, is 90% in your ward, but a little goes off in the other direction. And the same thing for these 2 TIFs down here. The 69th Street and Ashland is 80% by you guys. And then the 79th Street Vincennes is about 72%. So that means some of your neighbors are sharing your grief, you know, with these particular TIFs. Now, it does happen that in some wards, a TIF is 100% in the ward, and that happens maybe about 40 times, you know, across. But anyway, these are the players, if you will. So now this is your team. This is your TIF team, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the players that are present in your community. And this shows you a little bit. Now you have your handout. So this is in your handout. This map shows the boundaries of the ward, and then you can see the TIF districts, you know, in the colored squares. So you can see how they overlay. And so that's the geography. That is the economic geography of TIFs for your community. That's how they lay here. Okay. Okay. So first headline: your TIFs took $1.3 million from you last year, 2013. That's the first time anybody's ever heard that. So now you know. Those TIFs took from your ward $1.3 million in 2013. The 6 TIFs spent a total of $5.6 million. And some of it was not a lot of it was in the ward, but some of it was out of the ward. The Department of Planning and Development skimmed $115,000 from you. So since they manage the TIF program, they're in the fortunate position they can grab some money as it goes by in the conveyor belt. And they've taken $7.6 million from all the TIFs because they can. Which is weird because they're a budgeted item in the city's budget, and you would presume that when the mayor gives them their budget for the year, that's what they're supposed to operate on. But except they can grab another almost $8 million of our taxes without anyone saying anything about it. And they took, of that, they took $115,000 from you guys. So you might want to know what they did with it. The total taxes extracted by the 3 TIFs that I mentioned that were very much present in your ward. So that's a special case. We want to put an extra lens on those guys because they're so present in the ward. How much have they collected since they were created? And some of them were created 20 years ago. So put it all together, those 3 TIFs, a total of $7 million. So that's, That's not chump change. What happened to that money? Now, the next thing I'll tell you that is also news is, remember I said there was $1.7 billion sitting in the TIF accounts at the end of 2013? Remember? Okay. How much of that came from you? So, another way to put it is, how much money from this ward is sitting in the bank, so to speak, or somewhere, just sitting there? Best of our ability, $10 million. So that's news. That's never been reported before. Did you know that? So I'm sure people here, we heard testimony from your neighbors, ample testimony about needs in this community. You know, pressing needs of our children, of our parks. And I'm sure we could spend the rest of the night with everybody telling a story about how public transportation is not working for you, or you know, you were looking for some health services that weren't available. I'm quite sure people will have much to share. And if you went to your alderman and complained about these things, the alderman would say, well, I feel you, but we're broke. There's no money. So,
Is that the amount from the primary three or from the six?
That's from all of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question is back to some of these very, powerful questions is, are we broke? Who plans what for who? Where's this money? And why can't we have access to it? It's your taxes. I mean, it's nothing strange. I mean, it's nothing unusual. It's not like a federal grant or something that's very complicated. No, it's your property taxes. $10 million sitting right this minute somewhere. Yeah, says Randy. Oh my goodness. Now, just to put this in perspective, the top 10 TIFs in the whole city, are not here. But the number one TIF is the Near South TIF that took in $61 million in 2013. They spent $100 million. They had a fund balance of $125 million. So that's one TIF, the number one TIF in the city. So you add up just these top 10 TIFs, and their bank account is almost $600 million. So it's just the top 10. And it points out something that is counterintuitive, perhaps, but that is this. These TIFs really work only for areas that are wealthy. Think about it. You put this TIF on an area that's struggling and it doesn't generate a lot of property taxes, well, you're not going to have a lot of money in your TIF pot. You put a TIF on the Loop or the West Loop where property taxes are booming, that TIF pot fills up very fast with hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's handcuffed, like I said, in that area. So now you start to see a structural problem that is preventing, it's having the opposite effect of what the TIF program, what Mayor Washington meant it to do. Meaning to try to put resources in areas where it's needed, it's the opposite. And are you surprised to learn that the rich get rich, and the poor get nothing? So this TIF thing is really ass backwards, and I think it's vulnerable on a civil rights case, frankly, when you look at the communities that are being deprived of resources. All right, so these are the top 10 TIFs. So if you live in one of these TIF areas, you're fat and sassy, because if you need a park or you need something, I mean, you have all this money up in here. And that leads to this other question of who plans what for who. So when you need a park, if you need a park, do you need a park here, by the way?
Yes.
You need a park, you need equipment, you probably need more staff at the park, right? Are the fees becoming out of reach for the parents, when there is programming? This lady's nodding her head. So, well, I have news for you. Too bad for you, because these guys are going to get a park way before you will, because they have the money from those TIFs. So like I say, that TIF money is captured and handcuffed. It cannot come here. Cannot come here. All right. Now, we mentioned schools. Schools are, public education is part of what makes this country great. And any attack on public education is a direct attack on our democracy and our economy. And so in the Tresser family, public education is sacred. My mother was a public school teacher. My wife was, and I was on the local school council. In my elementary school, we don't have any kids. but public education is sacred to me. Well, unfortunately, as has been well documented by your speakers, you've been taking a huge hit here in this community, in your schools. You've had 8 schools closed in the proximate area. Parkman, Bonton, Ross, Alkin, Yale, Woods, Morgan, and Banneker. And if anybody knows different, please correct me. This is information from our research. Schools cut near the ward include Gage, Libby, Morrill, Team Englewood, Davis, Eberhardt, and Kellogg. This is the money that was stripped from them in 2013. So this is not the most current, but when they announced the school closings, they also announced a round of cuts. It's a total of $5 million. So while the money is taken away from the schools, it's also being drained from you from your property taxes. And that property tax money apparently is not able to come back to you for these reasons. So I'm presuming no one has asked you, how you would like to see this thing go. Would you like your property taxes to go back to repair this? Or some other things that you might have in mind for your community. No one has asked you. No. Okay. Show me the money. Well, this is Chicago, so we want to know who got paid. And there's some activity here. Some communities get quite a lot of TIF projects. You've had a few. You had $100,000 in streetscaping. You had Ralph's Grocery. Anybody know Ralph's Grocery? Food for Less? Food for Less, is that what they're called now? Okay, well they got $977,000. So you all get any free chips in there when you go in there? No. No? Well, you gave them $977,000. I hope it was used wisely. Something called Blaze Your Fish, which I think might be a housing project, but I don't know.
No.
No?
That has to be the mall. That can't be.
Maybe a mall?
That's about my house.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the development company then. Blaze Your Fish. So this is a mall perhaps then?
Both of them in the same mall.
Yeah, it's a mall.
Both of them in the same mall.
Okay, so it's a double.
Right.
It's a double hit. Okay. Good. Great. Well, to do the mall, they got $940,000. And then there were 8 small business improvement projects. Not a lot, but they totaled about $667,000. So you really have not received a lot. I mean, a lot has been taken from you, as I demonstrated. Millions upon millions of dollars have been taken from you, but you really haven't received much, have you? And the question really is, some people would say, well, who's Ralph's Grocery and how come he got $1 million? Under what circumstances do you want to give a private business money? That's for you to decide, but I'm kind of like a capitalist, a strange capitalist. It's like you take a loan or you invest your money, you have a business, you sell your stuff, hopefully people like your stuff, they buy it, you make profit, you reward your employees, you reward yourself, and life is good. Or you sell crappy stuff and nobody buys it and you go bust. Oh well, welcome to America. Except when you get bailed out. So we bailed out the banks, remember that, a few years ago? $14 trillion. And here we have a situation where some businesses are getting public money, and others right next door are not. So it's something you need to think about. You may be able to put your arms around this TIF program and figure it out and reform it. You may not be able to, but I still ask you this essential question. Under what circumstances do you give your tax dollars to a private businessman? Under what circumstances? Okay. That's a question that has not been answered, to anyone's satisfaction, I think. All right, I'm going to now show you the TIF Hall of Shame. These are some of the projects that make no sense whatsoever. Some of them have been in the headlines, and you may be familiar with them. The Chicago Board of Trade received $15 million. Now you can't even be in there except if you had to be a millionaire. You can't even walk in the door, But they refurbished their offices, and we gave them a bunch of money. They threatened to leave the state. The state gave them several $100 million in tax breaks. I threatened to leave the state, and they said, goodbye, Tom. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, right? Oh, I thought I could get something, if I threatened to leave. Coca-Cola, a very needy company, received $3 million. The guys who bought the Sears Tower, for goodness sakes, a welcome to Chicago gift of $3.8 million, and my favorite, Grossinger's Auto, in the heart of Lincoln Park, across the street from the Apple store, $8.5 million to do their showroom and repair megastore. In the second ward, they want to build a stadium, they say, for the Blue Demons, a mediocre team at best. Sorry if I offend any DePaul alumni in here, but they'll see me after. But excuse me, they draw about 4,000 people a game, so how's it going to fill a 10,000 seat stadium? It had nothing to do with them. It's about the casino, ladies and gentlemen. The casino that the mayor wants to build right over here. And when Beyonce comes to sing, she'll fill the 10,000 seats. Right? When Elton John sings in the thing there, he'll fill 10,000 seats. And they'll walk from the convention center over the land bridge to the hotel into the arena to be entertained, and then over to the casino to gamble, and they will never put their feet on the floor. They will never touch ground. They will not shop here. They will not shop in the Loop. So you heard it here. The casino is coming if the mayor is reelected. You can be sure of it. This high-rise office tower, 52 stories across the river from the Merchandise Mart. $29 million in TIF money to build this park. I remember I asked you if you guys needed a park.
Yeah.
Well, too bad for you. They're going to get one before you do, because they know the mayor. They knew the old mayor, they knew the new mayor. So this 52-story office tower, which has probably cost about $220 million, give or take, is going to get $29 million from the taxpayers of that part of the city to build this thing. Now, who's going to use this park, really? You know, I mean, look, there's this building that's like a barrier. Here's the Lake L, that's a barrier. Here's the river. So it's really the guys who take a smoke break. They're going to come down here and take a smoke break. That's the guys who are going to enjoy that park, while you put up with more concrete and your kids, play in the streets. Too bad for you. You want serving up some tennis in the third ward, $3 million for a sports complex. And finally, what I want to leave you with is just what I would call some, policy considerations that really need to be considered. Huge problems with this whole mess. Number one, as I said, the TIF moves money around the city outside of normal budgeting process. So some people have called the TIF program a slush fund. And I think that's a fair characterization. Other people say it's money that's off the books, right? It's like Enron accounting, when the books need to be, there's two sets of books. There's the books that you see and the books that really tell the story. Well, this whole thing is off the books. This whole process that I'm speaking to you about is not available to your aldermen and the public in a considered manner when they discuss the budget. As the budget process moves through the city council, this is not that. This is off the books, and therefore it's subject to clout and corruption. And this thing about the transporting the money is even worse, because that happens even under the radar. Okay, so that's problem number one. And as I said, over $140 million was moved around the city willy-nilly in 2013 in this program. Number two, as I said, TIF money is handcuffed and must stay, with the exception of the porting, where it's collected. So this heat map represents where TIF money has been spent. Bright red means more. And guess what? It's the Loop. The Loop has been the center of Chicago's development for 100 years. This is nothing new. Going back to the Burnham plan, it's about keeping the rich people happy. It's about people who look like me, frankly, and not who look like you. In fact, I would say the city's on a roll to try to get rid of most people of color or people of modest means. Just move you the heck out of here. if I gotta be blunt with you, and the destruction of our schools is part of that. I just have to say. So here's the, this is the proof of it right here. So if let me put it this way, if you say, Tom, you got an axe to grind, you got a chip on your shoulder, this TIF thing is really working for us. If that were the case, then what this would be bright red out here, and this would be very pale, meaning the money flowed out to where it's needed. Instead, it's the opposite. Bright red here, little, hot here. This is, Hyde Park and the West Loop and so forth. So
Hyde Park didn't get it either.
yeah, they're not as, they're down in here. So yeah, it's like this part down in here, not so much. Not so much. But the loop and sort of the greater loop area, they're flush. And finally, it doesn't work. Save the best for last. You'll often hear TIFs being proposed for economic development, but the experts are telling us it has nothing to do with it. It's about a hidden tax. It's about slush funds. It's about favoritism to the mayor's friends. It's about those things. And when people tell you that it's about economic development, well, this is what these experts say. They wrote a book called Rethinking Property Tax Incentives for Business. This is the Lincoln Lands Institute. They've been looking at this stuff for like 40 years. This is what the authors say of this report. This is a quote. They say, "Our message is simple. Please, please, if you're going to offer incentives, don't give them to every firm that asks. Don't. 90% of the time, they don't work, and handing them out after a company has already located in an area without them makes no sense at all." But ladies and gentlemen, that is a description of Chicago's TIF system. It's exactly that. So those are the three major policy issues that I would say, aside from all the other injustices and craziness that we've gone over. I urge you to go online. This URL is on our handout. Sign our online petition. We'd like to send 5,000 signatures to the mayor to empty those TIFs. Turn that money, that $1.7 billion,
In our community. I want to empty them downtown.
Yeah. Well, if that $1.7 billion were flushed, and 56% of it went to the Public Board of Ed, that'd be a one-time gift of about $970 million. So the Board of Ed could probably use that money. But the mayor says that money is not available, and he won't tell us where it is. So that's a question that I think you should ask your candidates. Anybody who's asking for your vote, where's the money? You want to know where that guy says, "Show me the money," right? That guy. You need to be that guy. Show us the money. It's our money. It's $2 billion. Where is it? Where is it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my presentation. You have been illuminated.
Politicians favor who? And so what do we need then? If we're going to change that, what is needed? We need money, that's one, but what else do we need?
We need
we need aldermen who are accountable. What else?
We need to hold them.
We need to hold them accountable. What else?
Transparent.
We need and how, pray tell, do we get that kind of stuff? I'm going to just point to the brother to y'all's right. The way we do that is by electing folks like Brother David. Right? Folks that come from among us, that we know we have their cell phone numbers. We can say, "Brother, did you lose your mind?" I'm so angry that you got to hold me back, because I will not curse in the house of God. But some of what we saw tonight pushes us. Your spirit is saying, "I am angry at this."
Right.
And yet there is hope. Right? And so we have a brother who's running for alderman. And we have a chance to elect in the next 2 weeks. How many votes do you think it takes for somebody like David Moore to win? 5,000 votes. How many folks in this room? That's what?
That's not many at all.
Say it louder.
That's not many at all.
So we literally are standing within reach of an actual victory. And the thing about it is that, so UWF, this independent political thing, we've endorsed about 17 folks, So it's not just David. Like, imagine what city council would look like if we had like 20, 25, 30 people. Right? And what would happen again if we did that? And that's what we're trying to do. Does that excite you?
Yeah.
Oh, come on in here, somebody. So that's what we're doing. So we're literally within reach of this. And the way we do it is, so the organizers are around. And we know that folks have been active, but one of the ways that we actually win is by actually signing up and volunteering. And saying, I'm going to knock on doors. There are about 30 people in here. 30 people can't move that many people to vote. Your friends, your cousin and them, your mama and them, everybody in them. And we're going to call them before we're going to say, listen, I'm supporting David. Here's why. Have you voted? When you going to vote? We got to get this brother in. Because he stands with about 16 other people that if we can win, we are on the verge of a new day in the city. Does that make sense? So who's going to sign up and knock some doors with us?
Make phone calls.
Make phone calls, right? Look around. We have our organizers. They're here. We want folks to, we know a lot of people have already been active, but we don't win this if we're not active, right? The second piece of it is that we want to invite people to be a part of this organization that we're calling United Working Families. And the way you do that right now is by signing one of our cards. And Aaron, our organizer, has those cards, and it's putting your name down and saying, hey, I want to be a part of building this thing called United Working Families, where we get to build political power to move an agenda that favors working people. Who is in for that? Does that make sense to us? And so Aaron has cards, and we want to get, before you leave, sign a card and say, let me be a part of this thing. So volunteer, right? We have doors to knock, we have votes to move, and we can actually do that. And we have political power to build, right? And we can do that by signing one of these cards. Are folks with me?
Yeah.
Are folks with me?
Yeah.
Are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Are we going to elect David Moore?
Yeah.
Are we going to change this city?
Yeah.
Are we going to stop this foolishness with TIF? Yeah. Are we going to take our schools back?
Yeah. No, that's right.
All right, let's go. So David is going to come and close us out. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, David, for blowing our minds, Tom. And thank you all for coming out tonight. Right, before you leave, sign up to volunteer. This is how we change this thing. And sign up to be a part of this thing that we are building, United Working Families. David? Thank you.
Thank you all again, and as we prepare to close and leave this place, but not forgetting what we learned here tonight, and the saddest thing that you can do is keep this information to yourself. Some of your neighbors missed some good information. And information, as I said before, is power. And lack of knowledge is what we suffer from. And so again, I want to thank Mr. Tom Tresser for coming out and giving us that information. And this is what's going to happen when I'm in office. I tell you right now, I don't know everything. And neither did Einstein. He didn't even know his own phone number. But he knew to go to the phone book to get it. And so, the resources are there. And when I'm your alderman, because I'm independent, because I'm not controlled by anyone, but the people, because I come from you, I will give you those resources and bring those resources to you. So call your neighbors, sign up to phone bank with us. We just about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from the 24th, but early voting is happening now. Do it for you. Punch 52. Do it for you. Punch 52. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you, United Working Families. Thank you all for all the speakers. I appreciate you all. Stay blessed.
Thank you.